Rod McKenzie is from the Road Haulage Association. And Rod, good morning to you. First of all, tell me about what is going on at Dover, because Dover's the big one, isn't it, for us, for Europe? It's the big entry.
Yes, it is, Penny, and good morning. The situation at Dover and at the Irish ports is the sort of thing that if the news agenda was different in any other year, it would be right up at the top of the news. What we have is a chaotic situation which is deteriorating based on a really small number of the usual amount of lorries that go over the Channel and over the Irish Sea to bring us goods, because everything we need comes on the back of a lorry, and that flow is being disrupted at the moment by a mountain of brand new red tape which was introduced when we left the EU on the 1st of January.
And whose fault is that? Actually, is there something that can be, because obviously the thing is that we all knew, I think, well, everybody, I say we all knew, but there was a huge suggestion that this was always going to go down to the end, that the discussions would be down to the wire. So is this something that's going to sort of, essentially at the moment, like anything new is always a difficulty, isn't it? Is that just it?
Well, absolutely, but it's more than just something new. If you put yourself in the shoes of a trader, they are faced now with a mountain of red tape that is highly complex and often contradictory. It has not been well designed. Now, they will in turn think, gosh, I can't do this. I need to find someone to do this work. So they go out to people who are called customs agents to try and fill in the forms correctly for them. And they'll find that there are no customs agents available to do the work because they're overstretched and there are not enough customs agents in Britain. That means that lorries will then potentially set off for their destination with incorrect paperwork and they'll be stopped. The government IT systems, which we were told were fit for purpose and state-of-the-art and all that, turn out to be not so, and yesterday part of them collapsed. So this is a perfect storm of different circumstances coming together to have the effect of delaying lorries at the ports. Add to that the French insistence on COVID tests for lorry drivers who are lone workers and therefore unlikely to be vectors of disease, which further creates another delay. And what does that all mean? It means a dangerous potential for what we see in our shops over the next few weeks.
And if we think about up in Scotland, the headlines we've talked about earlier today are, fishery issues where they can't export the fish, and because it's so perishable, 2 days worth of travel instead of one is leading to a huge amount of loss, boats being sort of stranded or not getting put into use. In the last week, we've seen the Fisheries Minister effectively admit that she hadn't read the fisheries portion of the deal, which of course astounds anyone in that industry given how high profile fishing was as part of the debate. What happens next from a government point of view to address these sort of haulage, these sort of paperwork delays? Do they need to be going back to the deal, or is there just a sense that there's not the confidence that government have read these things properly and know what's even in there now?
Well, the government have got luck on their side at the moment, in a way, because people's attention is diverted by COVID and the pressure that we're putting on government ministers, including Michael Gove, with whom we're in touch with several times a week, to do something, is able to be shrugged off as teething problems. But it's not a teething problem if you're the Scottish haulier who had a lorry load of fish which took 5 days to clear the border and arrive in France at its eventual destination, by which time it was off, and tens of thousands of pounds worth of fish was lost as a result. That is tragic, and the government is not currently being held to account on this because of other pressures.
Now, I'm thinking for people who have got big companies, they've got the resource, they've got the experience to perhaps have committed money to preparing for Brexit, and they've been the ones to perhaps bring in that customs agent that are so hard to come by. If you're a small to medium enterprise who, you're almost sending things out by hand, you're not super sophisticated in your systems and setup, where do these people even go to start exporting to EU now?
Good question. And of course, it's very difficult because you would start with thinking, gosh, I must be able to do this myself. I'm going to have a go. Then you realize you get stuck or you make a mistake. And then you ring up a customs agent, and they're expensive, by the way, and you discover there are none available. You're sort of paralyzed in terms of your business. What can you do? Because if you put your goods on the back of a lorry, which is probably a mixed load lorry, if you're a small trader, you're not going to be able to fill the entire back of a big truck. And if you got your paperwork wrong, the whole lorry, including all the correctly filled in forms, will be held at the border, with enormous frustration for other traders who've done all their paperwork correctly and not made mistakes. So it's a truly chaotic situation here, and incredibly frustrating for small traders. And do you know what? We're not even seeing normal flows at the borders yet. We've got about 40% at Dover of what we would normally have at this time of year. Sooner or later, traders are going to have to try and send their things, otherwise they're out of business, and that will create, it'll be a dam, and we're looking at a dam now which will burst.
Do you think, though, that there will be a lot of people who are just saying this is not worth it, and they'll just stop trading with Britain? Because they'll look at it and they'll just say, haulage companies, for example, in Europe will just say, do you know what, I'm not going over there. It's far too difficult to get back again, or far too difficult even to get in the first place. We'll just stay in the EU. Do you think that will happen, or that maybe there'll be I don't know, more planes arriving with produce rather than lorries?
It's a good point, Penny, and this is the problem. Before Christmas, all that trouble at Dover, which people will remember, lots of Eastern European lorry drivers who make up the bulk of lorry drivers who come to Britain with goods were saying, do you know what, it's not worth coming to Britain. And since then, Polish, Romanian and Bulgarian lorry drivers in their droves have been telling their bosses they don't want to do the UK run because they have to have COVID tests, because they have delays, because they've got to present paperwork that they don't have to do in any other country. So they'd rather haul in Europe, in France, Germany, etc., where there are none of these problems and open borders. And that is a real problem because we don't have many British lorry drivers. We rely on Eastern Europeans. And that in itself is another additional problem to this perfect storm that I've been describing.
And as a road haulage association, we have one road border with the EU now over between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. What's happening there, and how is that expected to change and evolve?
Well, it's shocking. I mean, it's much worse on the island of Ireland than it is at the moment in England, Wales and Scotland. And what's happened is without getting incredibly complicated about this, Ireland relies on these mixed loads. And some of the things in the back of the lorry are for the Republic and some of them are for Northern Ireland. And that has created real confusion. And these lorries have been held often in Dublin for long periods of time. And the effect of all this in Northern Ireland, if you go to the supermarket, is there are big gaps on the shelves. And it is reaching to a critical situation there with Northern Ireland politicians obviously complaining to the Westminster government that something must be done, because if this is allowed to continue, I'm not exaggerating to say the island of Ireland will run out of food.
Do you think you're going to get something done?
Well, eventually, the tragedy of this is it'll have to get worse before it gets better, before the government acts to do something. They will claim that they're talking to the Irish government, and they'll claim that they're talking to other European governments to try and get easements, but nothing much seems to be happening, to be honest. And therefore, the sense is, something really bad has to happen.
You're saying that this government seems to work on crisis management.
Well, absolutely, and they're dealing obviously with the COVID crisis, which we all understand. But this is a food and logistics and trade crisis at a time when the economy is in trouble anyway. And if our international trade collapses as a result of all this, it'll make everything worse.